Are you looking to become a better real estate investor? Then hang on, because you're about to experience another episode of the world's most popular real estate podcast, the BiggerPockets Podcast. But before we get to this week's show, I wanted to invite you to become part of our community, BiggerPockets.com, the real estate investing social network. The membership is free, and you'll instantly gain access to networking opportunities, educational content, investor tools, and more. Sign up now and get a free copy of our book, The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Real Estate Investing, read by hundreds of thousands of budding entrepreneurs. Just click this link right here or just head to BiggerPockets.com. With that, let's get to the show.
This is the BiggerPockets Podcast, show 110.
I don't interview the people who are actually going to be living in the house, so I don't deal with applications or background checks or any of those things.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everybody? This is Josh Dorkin, host of the BiggerPockets Podcast, here with my co-host. It's Brandon. What up, B?
What up, Jay? You gotta be. Are we not tired of that introduction yet? You know, we gotta spice this up.
Oh yeah, how are we supposed to spice it up? Should we get some salsa music?
We should get some music. We should get some music and be like, I don't know. Here comes Josh and Brandon. Here comes Josh and
nice.
Brandon.
I like it. I like it. All right, somebody record it and send it our way. We'll do it.
Okay.
All right, man. Good show ahead today, man. We got lots of interesting strategies to talk about, don't we?
We do. This is a cool one. This is something that I latched onto because in my landlording, it gets a little bit stressful and there's a lot of hassle sometimes. Yep. And today, our guest actually uses a phrase called the hassle factor and talks about how to eliminate it. And his strategy has almost no hassle. And you guys are going to love this. It's great.
Yeah, it's really smart. Really brilliant.
Brilliant.
We haven't talked to anybody about this and man, I love doing these interviews and learning new stuff. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Me too.
Well, with that, let's kind of get this upfront stuff out of the way, and we will get right to the show. So, Brandon, why don't you take it away with today's sponsor?
Sure. All right. Today's episode is brought to you by RealtyShares.com. RealtyShares is a real estate crowdfunding platform that allows accredited investors to invest in pre-vetted real estate deals online. So investors can browse and invest in both residential and commercial properties that yield returns of 8 to 16% annually. As a RealtyShares member, you can passively invest in professionally managed real estate investments in a variety of asset types and locations for as little as $5,000, all from the convenience of your living room. So to learn more and to get started with a free account, visit realtyshares.com/biggerpockets. Again, that's realtyshares.com/biggerpockets. So
there you go. Nice. Yep. Awesome.
And trivia?
Let's do it. Today's trivia is...
All right, last week's show, we sat down with Scott Smith, an attorney, a very smart one from Austin, Texas.
Or so we think.
We think. He seems pretty smart to me. Who taught us how to protect ourselves from that inevitable situation of getting sued. On the show, Scott mentioned a certain kind of trust that he said was as good as an offshore account. So what was the name of that trust? If you think you know, send an email to trivia@biggerpockets.com for your chance to win the digital version of the book on investing in real estate with no and low money down, written by yours truly. And if you want to pick up a copy of that without doing the trivia, biggerpockets.com/no money. Check it out.
There you go. Nice stuff. All right. Well, let's get to this. Today's guest, Glenn McCrorey. Glenn McCrorey, I have a hard time saying it, is a landlord from the great state of Iowa, who has a unique and very appealing niche in the real estate space. Glenn was recently able to quit his job and is kind of running that hassle-free landlording business that we had alluded to earlier. I think you're going to love it. There's really just a whole lot of cool stuff to gain from the show. So I know I'm excited to introduce him, and let's bring him on board. Very quickly before we do, this is BiggerPockets.com/show 110. This is actually BiggerPockets.com podcast, show 110. But you can find the show notes at BiggerPockets.com/show 110. And we've got notes there. If you want to ask questions to our guest, feel free to do that over there. And with that, why don't we bring him on? All right, Glenn, welcome to the show, man. It's good to have you here.
Well, thanks, guys. It's surreal and a pleasure to be talking to you live.
Cool.
So.
Yeah.
It's surreal for me too, man. I see you wearing that shirt. And, I mean, it's freaking me out.
Well, we got a foot of snow yesterday, so this is me in denial.
Yeah, man. No, seriously, though, it's great to have you. We're really excited to chat with you. You've got a very unique strategy, and we're looking forward to chatting about it. But before we go there, why don't we kind of talk about your background, how you became a real estate guy? What'd you do beforehand, and how'd you get started?
Well, I joined the Army right out of high school.
I take back my comment on the shirt.
I joined the Army right out of high school. It was 82, the recession going on back then too. So was in the Army as an avionics mechanic, which is working on airplanes and radios, autopilots, things like that. But so I did that for a while. Then I got out, worked for Boeing and for Delta, and was an aircraft mechanic. But personality-wise, didn't really feel like that was the best fit. But I was just trying to make a living.
Yep, nice.
Yeah. So, but a funny story about Delta Airlines. I was 25, and I got there, and they got the uniform and the toolbox, and you walk out on the flight line. You're there with a guy that's 65. He's got the same uniform, the same toolbox, and I honestly think that's when the light kind of went ding. This is your life. And
yep.
That's when my wheels started turning. I didn't find real estate for a while after that, but that's when the wheels started turning.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. So how did you eventually kind of get there?
Well, I was going to school at night school and trying to get farther ahead at work and, white collar job, thing like that, sales. And you're going to love this one. One of my coworkers told me about a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was in 2003. So I read that and I was like, holy cow, I wonder if this guy knows my dad. I mean, my dad's the greatest guy in the world, but it's just exactly the same,
Nice.
Depression era mentality. And, and I was already trying to find the answer, and financially anyway. And so that just really resonated with me. So I got all excited and did nothing for 6 months. And, but then I got my feet wet, and my plan was to buy like one property a year. But after a while, you start seeing that, hey, you could really turn this into no need for a job. So that's why I got a little more excited as time went on. Plus, you keep getting laid off. You know how it is.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that's not nice, but I get you. Yeah, the layoff thing sucks. I've got we see that a lot, and amongst folks in the fam, and it's frustrating, and it happens to a lot of people, regardless of how skilled you are. You pick a job in an industry that's shifting or something's happening, and you find yourself in trouble. So you're ready. You've been kind of bouncing around for the idea for 6 months. How'd you jump in? How'd you dive in?
I decided that, hey, I like Florida, and my sister's moving from Tampa to Fort Myers. I should buy a condo and rent it to her.
Oh, good idea.
Yeah, it was a terrific idea.
What year was this?
2004. I did get her permission to tell this story, though.
Okay, good.
So she had a job. She's getting transferred, and I said, well, I'll buy this little condo and a golf course and rent it out to her, and, rent it out seasonally when she moves out, and someday when I retire, I could go use it. So she moved in and spent a couple $1,000s putting in ceiling fans and carpets and all this stuff. And 3 months later, was picking my wife and I up at the airport in tears, saying, I quit my job today. I'm moving back to Tampa. So I go, well, at least, you can't evict your sister. And so I didn't have a lease, and, so we just worked together to get the place furnished up. And that was the year they had 4 hurricanes in 2004. So, condo fees doubled, special assessments, pretty much anything that could go wrong did. But over the next few years, I just kept it and rented it seasonally. And, it doubled in value in a matter of a few years. And since I wasn't smart enough to sell it,
it dropped in value.
It dropped in value. So I still have it.
Oh, there was a bubble, wasn't there? Was that?
Yeah.
I mean, is that what we're talking about? This whole?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I do tell people that's probably the worst mistake I've made. Is I left $100-something thousand, hanging out there. But I did take out a line of credit. I was smart enough to do that, and I used that to buy 4 rental properties, and I still have all those today, and I still have the condo, and it's the only thing that loses money, but my credit's intact, I guess.
Yep. Well, I think that's one of the things that a lot of investors go through. I mean, like I've been there. I have property, at least one I can think of that's the same story. Well, I rented it to my brother-in-law, but like, it's a terrible property. It doesn't give me any money today. I have a lot of problems with it, but I don't know. It got me to where I am today. It got me moving on, just like yours got you the line of credit that you were able to buy more properties with, which I would actually love to touch on that subject here maybe in a minute, but maybe I can ask you about the family thing first. Like, why is that typically not a good idea to rent to family or friends?
Well, because you're one big tool in the toolbox. If your landlord toolbox is, evicting someone if you had to, and you got to keep peace. I mean, I didn't have her sign a lease. I figured it's my sister. She's good for it.
Yep.
And she did pay her rent for 3 months.
Yep.
So, and I get to keep the improvements she made, and we're in great terms. It's but we're in great terms because we didn't have a big blowout. And so I just going forward, and then you start reading books, and they say, hey, that thing you did, don't do that.
Yeah.
And so then you're like, oh yeah. So I would help anyone in the family, and I'm always trying to get people to invest and read things, and friends and family and colleagues too. But I have not done any business deals with friends or colleagues, so I just kind of keep that separate.
The last friend that I rented to was like this couple that I knew from growing up when I was a kid, and they wanted to move out to my area, and so they said, hey, do you have anything to rent? I said, actually, perfect. I have a property that you guys can rent for free. Just take care of the place. It was my apartment complex, and I mean, I love this couple to this day. They're one of my favorite people in the world. But when they moved in, I said, there's only really one thing I ask is please do not move out in the middle of December, which is like 4 months in the future. And yeah, no problem. So when did they move out?
Yeah.
Middle of December.
Right.
Didn't get rented till like March 1st, I think. And like, it's like that same thing. Like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to lose a friendship over that, but it cost me a couple grand.
Right.
And so,
which is why you don't get into those situations in the first place.
Right.
Yep. Last time I ever did it was that couple. And again, I love that couple, but if they're listening, you guys rock. But like, but
you guys screwed me, really.
Yeah, it was a couple. It was a rough thing. So that's it. She got pregnant and like, moved home to be closer to family because it was a difficult pregnancy.
Yeah,
but
makes sense.
Still, yeah. I mean, every reason in the world, but had that not been it would have probably turned out a little different. They would have had a lease and they would have had responsibilities more. So anyway.
Yeah. Nice. Hey, Glenn. So, and I know, Brandon, you had some other stuff you wanted to kind of get into, but you had mentioned some of the worst things happening to you with that condo. And I just want to kind of dig in a little bit. You had talked about special assessments and some other stuff. Explain that. How does that work? I've talked about it a few times over the couple of years on the show, but it's nice. I got socked with some small ones when I was in condo, when I had a condo. But I know some folks who've gotten really just rocked by those things. So tell me about your experience.
The assessment is the condo association collects the fee, the homeowner association dues, and then they set money aside. And so like every year they set aside 1/15 of a roof, what they think a roof would cost. And so 15 years from now, the money's squirreled away specifically for the roof, and every so many years for the paint and so many years for this and that. So this one's run really well. But if 3 or 4 years after replacing the roof, there's a hurricane and it rips the roof off, not only do you don't have the money for the roof, but everybody needs a roof, and the cost of that roof is twice what you were planning on. So then they just take the cost, divide it by the number of units, and say, everybody write me a check.
Yep.
So,
and what if you don't write them a check?
I think they can put a lien on your property. So
Yep.
I just write the check.
But if you can, I mean, that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
If you can't, if you're running thin, which most people do, right? Most people aren't sacking away, tons of cash to store just in case a special assessment comes up. That, I don't know. I think that's one of the big reasons that I kind of tell people to shy away from condos is those things are scary. But at the same time, listen, you need cash to invest in buy and hold property. You have to have some kind of cash, whether it's yours or a line of credit or some kind of access to cash. And if you don't, you should not be in that business. I mean, you really, really need to make sure you have that, correct?
That's right. A lot of people think you can buy properties with no or low money down. Actually, it's not.
Oh boy.
I believe I saw that book in your screen just a moment ago. See, that's what I thought. See, he's just giving me a hard time. No, I believe I'm 100%. And that's why I wanted to touch on what else you said there is the line of credit thing, because that's from that same kind of concept of creative investing. But no, I actually agree 100%. You might be able to invest in real estate with no or low money down, but it doesn't mean you can invest in real estate when you're completely flat broke. And I think I make that pretty clear in the first chapter of those people who have read it. Hopefully they agree with me on on that one. But like, yeah, because you have to have money for those things that come up, because they will come up. I mean, I know somebody who got a house. What was the story? Now I don't remember the exact details, but it was something like they bought a rental, and then like the very first month they had an eviction, and it was a terrible eviction that took like 9 months, and they destroyed the house in the process. And it was like $8,000 or $10,000 hit on their very first month with their very first rental. Yeah, I mean, those things are unlikely, but it happens. I mean, those things do happen. So again, yeah, even if you're going to invest creatively, make sure you have some kind of reserves.
We only have had one horror story, and it was similar to that, where the lady wanted to rent the house, and I said, well, I haven't made my decision yet, but she also painted. So I said, I need to have it painted, so I'll pay you to paint the inside of the house, which involved me giving her a key. So here comes everybody, cats included, and so
really?
yeah,
man. I mean, the cat part is really the freaky thing.
She actually, when I finally got rid of them, they abandoned the cat, and my wife and I had to find a home for the cat.
Oh,
you didn't keep it? Come on,
terrible.
Glenn, the cat guy.
She's allergic to cats and dogs. So
I'm allergic to cats and dogs.
Is that right?
I suck it up. Yeah.
Wow. Hey, Glenn, go ahead.
I was just saying it was her call on that. So.
Yeah, smart.
Well, so I want to kind of jump a little bit, because we're talking about special assessments. We're talking about condos. We're talking about Florida. Florida is a place that scares me as a potential investment. I mean, it's amazing. Listen, people go there to die, right? I mean, I'm from New York.
I go there for Disney World. I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, if you're from New York and you hit like 55, you pretty much suddenly live in Florida. It's like, it's a law or something like that. You have to do it.
Right.
You have to do it. But, obviously you're not dead at 55, but, anyway, but Florida, you got those hurricanes and those things, can really reap havoc. And so what's your take on it? Have you bought other properties there? Obviously you got whacked by that one hurricane.
What I did was I haven't bought anything else there yet. Even when you're looking at cash flow, if your condo association fees $360 and you have a mortgage on top of that, it's kind of tough to make money. But so what I learned was I really don't think that buying something sight unseen in Florida was, anybody could write a check and do something like that. The trick was saying, okay, this isn't going well, but I was still convinced that real estate was my means to an end. And so, I told my wife, I said, buying that second, third, fourth property is the trick, So just say, hey, I know it's going to work, and I'm not going to do this again. I need to go buy some boring stuff in Iowa that cash flows so I can go to Florida and hang out whenever I want. So we just changed gears, and I realized the difference between speculation and buying for cash flow, and that was my one mistake.
Are you losing money on that on a monthly basis then?
I lose a few $100s a month on that condo, but I got.
But you go and visit, right?
Well, I go down and hang out for a few days and do a walkthrough and write the whole thing off like anybody would. So
right, yep. Interesting. So Brandon mentioned his property. You've got this property. Both of you guys are holding on to properties that, in a lot of ways, are losers, right? I mean, these are properties that you guys are losing money on. For those folks who are listening, Brandon just hid. Oh, there he is. Why do you continue to do that? Like, I could see doing that with your property, Glenn. If I were to go say, I'm going to go out a weekend, or I'm going to go out midweek for a couple days a month and, get the enjoyment out of the property. But is it because you guys are both emotionally tied to those properties because they kind of helped you hop off? Or I'm just curious. And for those people listening, should other people do, if they're in a similar situation, should they do what you're doing? Or do you know that you shouldn't do what you're doing and you just can't get out? And I throw this to both of you guys.
Well, I'll say this. The reason I kept it was because it was going up like a rock. When it doubles in value in 3 years, you look in the mirror and you see a real estate genius, right? So I was pretty excited about that. And then I was smart enough to get a line of credit for $90,000. So that allowed me to buy 4 bread and butter properties here in Cedar Rapids. So I just kind of look at it sort of as a portfolio. So then when the market, the bubble burst and it went down, you guys have heard of the concept of underwater. Yeah. so then I had a first and a second, and I was upside down on it, and so it was an interest only second. So I just kept it and just considered that a cost of capital, and you put that with the other 4 properties I bought, I'm making money, and that's the goal.
Yep.
So. Gotcha, Brandon. What's your take?
Well, I'm also like underwater, or at least like at an even point where it's worth about what I owe. Probably not. I'm probably a little underwater, but I don't know. I mean, like I'd have to bring money to the table to get rid of it, which is a possibility. We considered that, knowing we call that our hell house because like we've had like 5 or 6 bad ones in a row. Tenants, it just seems to attract that type of person. So we had a choice. Do we want to get rid of it, or do we want to give it to property management? We gave it to property management. That's the one I talked about a couple months ago. Is one of the 2 I handed off, because I mean, I actually break even on the cash flow on a like rent versus mortgage. Like my rent is the rent we get on that place is like, I think it's $850 and my mortgage is $790. And then, I think we pay water or something like that, right? So like we basically break even on that property. And then whenever there's a tenant turnover, there's a couple $1,000s. Whenever there's a vacancy or repair, that costs a little bit of money. So I actually lose money on that, but I pay the mortgage down by several thousand every month. So in other words, right now, today, it is a forced savings account. 30 or 25, 24 years from today, it'll be paid off. And my tenant would have paid that mortgage for me over those years, essentially, sort of.
Gotcha.
It's like yeah.
So do you guys, I mean, because this is a tough topic. I mean, I'm not, I bring this up because it's an important thing that you guys are not alone in this, right? There's a lot of people out there who are in a similar situation, and they probably are. And I'm guessing you guys have had this conversation with your spouses or others, like, do we get rid of this thing? It's upside down. It keeps kind of coming back. Like, what do we do? These conversations happen amongst other investors, guys, whoever's listening. I mean, so recognize A, you're not alone in the situation, and B, everybody's going to have their own kind of reasoning for what they do. And the question is your reasoning sound, or are you doing it because you're emotionally attached? And I think if you're doing it because of some kind of sound reasoning, Brandon, for savings account, it's not the greatest reason, but it's a reason enough, right? Glenn, yours is you get the opportunity to go down, write it off, go to Florida, have fun, work on the tan a little bit. Cool. But if you don't have reason, it's like, oh, well, but I'm should you be holding on still? If you were an outsider talking to you, would you say hold on or get rid of it? Both of you guys.
I'm at the point now where it's back to about break even, but okay. I've got a year-round renter who's been there almost 4 years. He's a white-collar realtor type guy, and he's just low maintenance, and he pays me sometimes 2 months at a time if he's going to be traveling, and it's just sitting there, and the market's coming back, and so I'm not emotionally attached to it, but if I was someone else and I had one money loser across the country and I could write a check of some sort and get out of it and move on, lesson learned, I probably would do that. But a lot of people, they took out those second mortgages and then they went and bought motorcycles and whatever else they bought with them.
Yep.
And then it all collapsed and they bankruptcy and things like that. So, we just didn't want to do that. We realized we need to keep good credit while we're building our portfolio. So we just sucked it up for a few $100s a month and just kept going. And now we're back to where if we wanted to sell it, it would be no problem. But it's like the path of least resistance. I got other things to do.
Yeah.
There you go.
Well, and for me, I think that you could actually kind of boil it down to a mathematical equation, right? Like if it cost me $10,000 to get rid of this property, so I no longer have to deal with it. Essentially, I'm saying I'm investing $10,000 of my cash in order to earn the $200 a month on average I'm losing on that property. So, $10,000, $200 a month, it's $2,400. That's 24% return on investment. Am I better off with the 24% return on investment off of paying that? Maybe, but if you add in appreciation on that, potential appreciation or loan pay down, which is what I'm doing right now, it actually works out pretty well. So, I guess I would. And
I love that, by the way. That's
the mathematical look at it.
Well, I don't know if your math is right. I wasn't really paying attention.
Yeah, I did it kind of quick here live,
but I think that's awesome. I mean, that's a really good calculus for how to figure it out. It's going to cost you to sell. So does that make sense?
And I think, like one thing I tell people a lot when they screw up just they bought a deal early and it doesn't turn out today very well, whether it's the market or whatever, is use that as a springboard to do better next time, right? So if you buy a property that loses $100 a month, in cash flow, okay, well, use that lesson and go buy one that earns 200 in positive. And then now you're up by one, and you can do that. So, and then jumping back to what you said earlier, Glenn, I want to get to that topic of using a line of credit to buy another investment property. And so that's what you did. Now, back then, you could really easily get a line of credit on investment properties too. That's a little bit more difficult. But being that's an entire chapter in my book, I figure I want to get your opinion on it. What are your thoughts on that? How does that even work? Maybe from a stupid, simple standpoint, somebody who's never heard of that concept before, what are we even talking about?
I have been getting lines of credit established. The best time anybody will tell you is to do it when you don't need it.
Yep.
Because if you go to them and say, hey, I got a deal, I need this, it just can't happen fast enough. So get your lines set up beforehand. Now, that particular one, they gave me a $90,000 line of credit based on that equity in the condo. And it was interest only, and it was for like 15 years or something. It was just really good terms. So I used that to buy 4 properties. Well, when I got to about the 4th property, I was up to $72,000, and that's when the bank went, hey, wait a minute. We're not sure we're really secured on this loan. And I was laughing because I couldn't believe they gave me the money. But so I bought 4 bread and butter properties here in Cedar Rapids, and I make money on every one of those every month, except when there's a new roof to put on or something, which will happen. But so I just kept paying that minimum payment, and then one day I refinanced from 25% down to 15% down on basically the whole portfolio, and wound up with a bunch of cash, and I just went back and paid off that line, and it's gone. Nice. But in the meantime, I established other lines of credit, and I actually use those, exercise them just so I've got them there. If I'm using cash all the time and I don't exercise a line of credit, I'm afraid it'll go away on me. So
yep.
So sometimes I'll pay these people some interest to take, say, $50,000 and put it toward a deal, and then a couple of weeks or a month later refinance it and then pay them back, and then I wait a little while, then I ask them for more money.
Nice. So is that a standard practice for those people who don't know how lines of credit work? I mean, if say you get a line of credit for $100,000, they give it to you for, I don't know, 5-10 years, and year 1.5 and you haven't touched it, they might take it away. Is that right?
I think that's true. I've been told and I've read that that's what you should do to keep it going and make it, have them grow it, so you never know what you're going to need the money for. So it's just better to have the access to it. And so I throw them a little interest every now and then and just keep, so maybe someday when there's a really big deal, I'm in a position to do something about it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Just to give another real life example of how you can use a line of credit. This is something that just popped in my head this morning, honestly. Like I was thinking, I have a pretty decent amount of equity in my house, not a massive amount, but I owe like 80,000 on my house and it's worth about 150. So I have like, with a good appraisal, 70,000? Yeah, $70,000 worth of equity. Now a bank might give me half of that, let's say. Let's say I can go and take out $30,000 in a line of credit. What I'm hoping to do, and I think, is take that $30,000 and use that as a 20% down payment on my next house or on a rental property. But I kind of want to move to a better, a little bit bigger house that I can, I don't know, have a piano in because my wife plays piano. So anyway, I might take that $30,000 line of credit, go put that on a down payment as another primary residence for myself, and then have a house for no money down. I mean, it's just another strategy. You can use a line of credit as a means to acquire a different property. Then if I built some good equity into it, I could go get a line of credit on that one later on and then go do that to the next one. I mean, you can kind of do that a number of times before you're,
provided you have the income to
provided
get
you have the income to get those loans. Yep. And every time it gets more difficult. Sort of.
You should get a boat and a motorcycle while you're
exactly. No, well, and that's actually a really good point, right? So, like you said earlier, a lot of people would do this like over leverage thing. Like they'd take all their money out and then they'd invest in, or they'd buy cars or vacations or whatever. It's the idea of taking out your asset, which is your equity, and then buying a liability with it. It's that whole rich dad or cash flow quadrant thing of going the wrong direction with that. And moving on, let's get out of this. So
fascinating discussion.
Yeah, I love that stuff. How many deals do you currently have? Like, how many properties do you own, and what are they?
The condo and 27 single family homes.
27. That's a good number of single family homes. Did you manage
those?
Go ahead.
All in Iowa, really quick.
They are. I've dabbled a couple times where I knew of something out of state. Somebody maybe knew the house through a family member or something. I bought a house in Missouri. It was a foreclosure. But, as I've sort of refined my business model, it just, these one-offs here and one-offs there just doesn't make as much sense. So I'm here in Cedar Rapids. I have probably a dozen properties over in Davenport, which is about an hour and 15 minutes away. And it's just, if there's an emergency, it's a lot easier. But my plan is to automate it a little bit more and empower people and get processes so that, I don't have to, I don't fix anything unless it's just obvious that hey, it's something simple and I'm here and I have a screwdriver, I'll put that doorknob back on for you. But, I don't, if it's anything else, I usually just have the handyman take care of it. So.
And what's the average acquisition cost on properties in Iowa? And Davenport, isn't that where, isn't the Quad Cities or something? Isn't that where?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. A little gambling mecca up there, right?
Oh, I guess so. There's some casinos. I try to stay out of them. So.
Nice.
But it's too much fun.
Nice.
Well, I'd say I'm looking for houses usually in the 90 to 100K, maybe give or take a little bit. I have a few that are more like 150, 160, but I don't like to get down into the 2% properties. We have a part of town where you can buy a $40,000 house and rent it out for $800 or $900, but the hassle factor just isn't worth it to me. So I provide a little nicer properties, a little nicer neighborhood, and rent it out like that. And your turnover's less. It's just like I said, a lot less hassle.
Yeah, I like that, the hassle factor. I don't think I've ever heard it phrased like that.
Use it.
Yeah, I'll write a book, The Hassle Factor. No, I mean, that's a discussion that is very popular on the BiggerPockets blog. There's a new post about that every month or so. Usually Ben Leibovich is behind it. And like why I don't, he's got like several why I don't buy $30,000 junkers or fixers or whatever. And maybe can we kind of expand on that a little bit more? I mean, what do you mean by hassle factor?
I rent mostly to organizations and companies. Like I think I've told you about that, where it's not an individual or a family. It's an institution or a company where they provide services for people with special needs. Yeah. So instead of dealing with, hey, I lost my job, or they cut my hours, or this or that, or hey, the roof's leaking. I buy a nice house, and keep it maintained, not necessarily fancy, but then I rent mostly to these companies who then kind of manage everything. And so it's like business to business communications. Everything's with an email, and it's not a bunch of late night texts and phone calls and, toilets stopped up and that sort of thing. So I'm not the most ambitious guy in the world, so I'm not,
How did you even get into that? Like the idea?
Yeah, we got to talk about this.
Yeah, because this seems much better. I mean, my tenants are often a hassle. I mean, I rent to not quite like the $30,000-$40,000 houses, but the multifamilies are kind of in that group. There can be a hassle sometimes to deal with, but the idea of renting to a company like this, and both me and Josh used to work in these industries. Like I used to do the overnight shift. That's when I discovered real estate. I did the overnight shift at a group home. There's like 4 developmentally disabled adults that lived in this home, and I did the overnight shift, and I was flipping through channels watching Flip This House, and that's how this like kind of at the very beginning all started. But
I was teaching high school at a special ed school where a good number of our kids lived in group homes, and it was the same kind of thing, and the homes were owned. And I don't know if in our situation, the homes were owned by the organization. The organization was renting from an individual like yourself. But I think it's a fascinating model.
Yeah.
And really quickly on the hassle factor. I mean, I think the hassle factor takes into account things like lower income properties. You're going to have higher turnover, higher evictions, potentially greater odds of damage, that kind of stuff.
More phone calls.
Yeah. But you're talking about even taking it a step further, you're not even dealing with the hassle factor on the blue collar, less drama thing. You're talking like least possible drama. I'm going straight to a business entity who's got a level of professionalism that's going to supposedly considerably higher. How'd you fall into that?
My wife, after several years of being investing in real estate, she decided to quit her job and become a realtor, and thought that would be a nice partnership, So she's still a realtor today, and one of her colleagues was on the board at one of these nonprofit organizations, and they were having issues with several of the houses. They have like 24 houses, and 4 of them they weren't happy with for some reason or another. I mean, it could be that the folks have been there so long they can't do stairs anymore, or it could be that the landlord's raising the rent or whatever their issue is. So I used that line of credit to buy 4 houses in 2008. So I bought four houses for that institution in 2008, and basically they would say, well, this group of guys needs to be near a bus line, and they go to take the bus and they go someplace every day. Another house, they might say, that doesn't matter to us, but we can't have stairs. So you might, or we've got you might even have to remove a gas stove and put in an electric stove because they don't feel like it's safe to have a gas one. So whatever their special needs are. So they tell me what the requirements are, and then I go out and find houses. So my wife and I, we go out and find the house, and we give them a short list that meet our requirements, that meet their apparent needs. And then we say, well, what about this one? Or what about this one? And they say, yeah, this would be great. If we negotiate the rent, and then I buy the house, and then they move in. And I've only had one house where they've moved out since March of 2008 when we bought the first one. So
Wow.
I don't interview the people who are actually going to be living in the house. So I don't deal with applications or background checks or any of those things. So
wow, this is what I'm talking about here. This is called Easybreezy Landlording, man.
I told you I wasn't that ambitious,
Wow. So now you said 27 SFRs. Are all those now filled by folks from this organization or others, or?
Well, 25 of the 28 properties I rent to some sort of organization.
No kidding.
I'm dealing with 5 different organizations now. So we started with the one, and then we bought a 5th one for them the next year. And then I got laid off somewhere in the middle of all that. And then, then a couple years went by, and we just picked up one here, one there for regular, just found a good deal, so we bought it. But then I started saying, I'm comparing notes mentally between dealing with this company and dealing with these individuals, and I think I like this better. And so then I started networking a little bit, and finding other organizations that might have similar needs. And so then these people all know each other because it's an industry, and so they go to the same trainings and things like that. So you start networking and getting referrals, and hopefully develop a good reputation. So next thing you know, you can say, hey, customer, company A, I work with company B, C, and D, and drop a few names, and they can check your references if they want, and then they can feel comfortable letting you help them with their housing needs. So that's
wow. Great idea. Really great idea. Now, so
don't tell anybody.
Yeah, apparently nobody's listening. Nobody's listening. This is the Josh and Brandon show. We have my mom listening, and Brandon's wife. But yeah, no, okay.
She stopped a long time ago, Josh.
Yeah, so did my mom. So, well, you've got these organizations. The rent checks come in regularly. Have you had any challenges with tenants, or is that not even an issue because the organization deals with them? They kick them out and they'll throw somebody else in if there's an issue, or how does that work?
They deal with the tenants. I interact. If I go over there, they get to know you. If it's like there's one that's literally 4 or 5 houses down, so if it's anything simple, I go check it out myself. It's just so convenient. But they don't have to fill out applications. The individuals, I rent it to the institution, to the company that's responsible. They actually, all but one check, everything else is electronic. I literally get electronic funds transfer for, 5 rents for this company, and here's 14 for this one, and here's, so I don't even have to collect the checks. And then as far as like managing what's going on, they handle all the issues because I'm not a, caregiver. I have no opinion on that, but there are instances where, depending on the level of functioning level of the tenant, they might have outbursts and punch a hole in the wall and that sort of thing. So we just have a standing agreement that don't tell me about it, just fix it and don't bother me. Yeah, so they know they damaged it, they need to fix it, and so they just take care of it.
That's what I was going to ask. Because I know when I was in that there were things breaking all the time, right? Like, especially some of the clients were just, they were just violent, and one of the guys would just break his window all the time. Like, again. If you just have that,
there's an upside to that.
Yeah, they take care of it.
My son has a house that he rents to my same customers, and one guy kept breaking out the windows. And when he broke the window, they literally broke every window in the house, and the company came back and had to put all new. Well, you can't get old crappy wood windows,
unbreakable windows. Yeah,
so they put in nice double pane vinyl windows, and they knock holes in the door, and so they would go get solid oak doors so that he couldn't do that anymore. And so they've slowly renovated that house for him, but that's really an outlier. Most of them are not like that at all. It's just, you always talk about the horror stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Usually it's just month after month of getting paid and dealing with small maintenance issues that I usually have someone else do.
Yeah,
so,
fascinating.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay. Well, how do you find deals? How are you finding these properties? Just because your wife's an agent, are you just all MLS, or are you doing direct mail or anything fancy like that?
This is a completely 180 out of phase with what people are doing as normal investors. So instead of finding the good deal somehow and then going out and finding the tenant, I mean, we start with the tenant and the layout, the location, everything. So one of the downsides is I pay retail pretty much for everything, but you can still use investor principles. I want to tell you about the last deal I did where I was trying to find a house. They had a different town, Iowa City down the road, very expensive. So I found one that was very dated. It was an estate and it was $99,000. And I'd been looking for a 3-bedroom, couldn't find anything that was affordable. So I took the people that worked for that company over to the house, and I said, now imagine, fresh paint, and imagine, updated fixtures and carpet and new vinyl and some appliances. And so this is the second time I'd done this for them. So they said, okay. And so it took me a month. I just wrote the checks and said, yeah, we're going to do this, this, and this, and had a guy do it. And we actually got the house for $85K because we did cash. And then put about $10,000 in carpet and paint and light fixtures and things like that. And that's $95,000. It appraised for $126,000. I went to the bank. I got a loan for, it could have been up to $100,000, but I just said, give me the $95,000 I've got in it. So then I got a mortgage for $95,000. And then I've got $31,000 worth of equity, a satisfied tenant with everything's fresh and new on the inside. And I really was out of pocket, no money.
Love it.
Yeah, but I like to talk about those because just to say, hey, I go into the MLS and I buy something, pay top dollar for it's not very impressive. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
What about rents? Are they paying market rent, or are they paying slightly above because you kind of have to go a little bit above and beyond to make the property friendly? And you're really, you're kind of like a personal shopper, so to speak, for people, right? I mean, you go and, hey, we need this kind of property with these things, and I'll get it for you.
I'm going to say that it's market rent, but I'm within $100 of market rent on any house. Okay. So, I mean, the last thing you want to do is look like you're taking advantage of these nonprofits or anything. So yeah. So, it's always a thumb in the air. It's like, okay, should this be 1,000 or 1,050 or would, 975, that kind of thing. But, it's a niche. It's a nice niche, and if you charge a fair rent, keep the house up nice, you get good referrals, you eliminate vacancy, you eliminate turnover, and that sort of thing, and that's worth something to me. So I'm not necessarily making more money in higher rent, but I'm making it. And when I go to a bank and say I've got 28 properties, I haven't had a vacancy in 5 years. They just prove it, So I have to show my tax returns.
Yeah,
it's just. It doesn't. I have to explain it every time. So
I think most investors would call you on BS on that one too, and
it's true.
I love it. I mean, this is really, really a cool strategy, a cool niche. There's not a lot of room for competition, though. I mean, how many people can come into your town and take over? Not a lot of people. So that's the cool thing about focusing on that niche and starting to own it. And I'm assuming, there's opportunity around the country for other folks listening to do something like this, but they better not show up in Davenport. They got Army general to go after.
That's right. Well, I was a sergeant, but still,
close enough.
They do all the work. It's a bit of a risk. I had to think about that, whether I wanted to go public with what I'm doing, because I kept it really quiet for a long time.
Yeah.
But I think after you've been doing it long enough and you've got a good reputation and you can get referrals, and if you said, hey, I heard this is a good deal, and you went to my customer and said, I want you to start moving people because I want to collect the rent.
Right.
If they're not unhappy, they're not going anywhere.
Yep.
Right.
So now if people want to do this other places, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do the podcast, to encourage people to keep an open mind when they're dealing with an organization like this, because it's horse of a different color and you don't really understand, hey, where do you work? Let me see your W-2. What's your credit score? And it doesn't really fit into that box.
Yeah.
But it's got some tremendous upsides. So,
well, and you're doing good to society as a whole too, which is really, I think, one of the coolest parts of it.
Yeah.
Altruistic? I don't know. I'll let you say that.
That's cool. I like it. I have my in-laws actually have a duplex, and one of their units they rent out to a religious organization of missionaries, right? So like they move new people in every, I think it's 4 to 6 months or whatever. But they have a contract with the religious organization, and they haven't had a vacancy in 3-4 years, never any problems. I mean, it's just flawless. And I'm very jealous of that rental that they have.
Yep.
It's the easiest, easy breezy, as you put it, Josh, like landlord experience, because it definitely is a cool niche, like landlording to companies that then rent it out to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
It's a lot like that. Another downside, though, for an investor is if you want to grow your business really fast, you may not have the opportunity in your area because there may not just be enough people to work with. So it's maybe an addition to your investing strategy,
Sure.
as opposed to going to jump in with both feet, because it's taken a while to kind of put this together. But now I'm full time as of first of the year. So
cool. I was just going to ask that. That was my last
Congrats.
question. Is do you still work a full time
Thank
job?
you.
Yeah.
No,
Very cool.
I wasn't even working a full time job when I had a full time job. No, I was working from home. I was working from home as like an account manager and in aerospace, and so I had plenty of time to switch back and forth between my work email and my Hotmail and podcasts, and sit on the front porch and listen to podcasts and watch cars go by. And
Nice.
I love it. But and it was a good job and a good company and all that. It was a very amicable departure, but I just kind of at the point where I'm not excited about that anymore. I've been doing that for 30 years. So
Yeah, cool.
Fantastic. That's great. Really, really cool stuff. Well, I think it's time to move forward.
It is.
Brandon?
It is time for the fire round, which is sponsored by the BiggerPockets live webinars hosted weekly by me. That's right. If you've not attended one of my weekly webinars, you are missing out, my friends. Last week, we talked about how to quit your job through the power of real estate. This week, we're talking about how to find, finance, and analyze deals. And who knows what we'll be talking about next week. Well, you can find out what we're going to be talking about by going to biggerpockets.com/webinar and signing up there. And we'll continually update that page with the newest webinar. Again, that is biggerpockets.com/webinar. And with that, let's get to the fire round.
It's time for the fire round.
All right, these questions from the fire round come straight from the BiggerPockets forums, and we're going to fire them at you, Glenn. Are you ready? Can you handle the heat?
Ready.
All
I'm
right.
ready.
All right, number one. What are some key factors real estate investors look for in homes? Like what makes a rundown home valuable? Bedrooms, locations, etc. Like what should an investor look for to provide value?
I think it varies by market. Obviously, it's a cop out. But for instance, the house I was just telling you about, that deal, which was like a no money down deal, I saw that there was a bedroom. It could be a bedroom in the basement. It had the window and the foundation, and the rest was just like some drywall and a vent and a light fixture. And so I was able to turn a 3-bedroom into a 4-bedroom. And that's how I was able to get that much equity. So looking to force some kind of equity like that is a good way of doing it. And, somebody was just asking me about a 2-bedroom. I said, I just would probably stay away from 2 bedrooms if there were 3 bedrooms to buy, and just try to find houses that have the most utility, that are maybe a little underloved, and fix them up a little bit. So.
Yeah,
Right
I love
on,
that. And
right on.
what you said there, going from like 2 to 3 or 3 to 4, especially 2 to 3. If there's that 3rd bedroom, that's the number one thing I look for in a property. Is if it says 2-bedroom, I say, is there a way to make it 3? Because that adds so much value in my neighborhood anyway. So,
and if possible, like even if the organization's saying, hey, this group can do stairs, I still look for a slab, because I can't. Maybe the next person that moves in to take someone's place does have a stair problem. So I try to look for the most utility.
yeah, smart. I love that.
Right on, right on. All right. Well, next question. When working with a foreclosure, how do you find out which bank owns the property? Well, that's whoever has it listed.
I've bought a few like that, but there was a sign in the yard and it says, call this person. I know that person is the person who does all the foreclosures. So
let me ask you a better question.
No, I think the question is no, because I hardly ever
misreading this.
Yeah, because you hardly ever know who the bank is. You know who the real estate agent is that's selling it, but typically the bank. The only way I know to find it is to look up on the county records, or you can call the agent and say, "Hey, what bank is this?"
I was just looking at one that had a sign in the yard, and no sign yet. And so I found out it was to the assessors. It said something about Wells Fargo. So I called Wells Fargo. They gave me the reo.wellsfargo.com, and you can look at their prop. But I still never figured out who owned it, because they said, "Oh, we're managing for someone else. We don't really own it." So I didn't get very far with that. So I'll be interested to find out what the.
Yep.
I can't answer that one.
I found that as well, though. There's a few properties no matter what I did, I could not find out who owned it. Like ultimately owned it because it was. Anyway, it's possible. But I think the crux of the question was the second half of it is.
I didn't understand the damn question. So,
should you even contact them? Like, are you supposed to contact the bank to negotiate a foreclosure? Or do you just work through the real estate agent? I think that was kind of I'm guessing that was their gist.
I'll answer it this way. I always just use the real estate agent, but
yeah.
Me too.
And as a heads up, since we're talking about this, about 8-9 years ago, I think 9, maybe 10 years ago, I started a directory of banks that offer REO listings. So you can literally go directly to the bank's website and see what properties that they have available for sale.
The irony is now most of those websites just point and say, talk to your real estate agent or talk to this real estate agent.
But a lot of them do, but you can still pick up, you can still kind of access and say, oh, okay, here's REOs. And obviously those properties don't have any liens on them. So, they're not necessarily good deals, but, odds of finding something are decent. You can find that at biggerpockets.com/REO. It's biggerpockets.com/REO, or we'll have a link on the show notes at biggerpockets.com/show110.
Perfect. All right, next question. What is the difference between assessed value and appraised value on a property?
The assessed value is what the city or county wants to base their taxes on, so that's the assessed value. But the market value and what it would appraise for, those are two different things too. So theoretically, you can get an appraisal. It should be what the market value is. It could be above or below the assessed value. But the house I live in now was assessed at least $50,000 more. It was like $195,000, and we bought it for $125,000. And we have them come out the day we bought it, and they lowered it $50,000. So our taxes went down about $1,200 a year, $100 a month.
Wow, nice.
So there can it could vary very wildly,
Yeah.
But a credit union I was using was letting me use the assessed value if the assessed value is better than the purchase price. So I've done some very low money down deals. I think that guy's boss has caught on.
Well, and that's a really good tip there, which is, hitting up the assessor and letting them know and kind of fighting for the valuation, because there's a really good tip there, which is going to the assessor and fighting the valuation, because you can actually negotiate it down. I think there's something that a lot of people didn't know that they can do. So if you were not aware, definitely keep that in mind going forward.
Yeah. I know in my area, our assessed values are way lower than our property values. And they do that because I don't know why they do that. I think it's because they don't want people calling and complaining. So like my house is assessed at like, I think 60,000 right now, or 50,000, even though like I paid like 60,000, but then I fixed it up and whatever else. But like, it's worth 150. They're typically a half to even a third of what the actual value is, which is crazy. But then what I find is certain banks will only go off the assessed value. So I go to the bank and I'm saying, I want a loan on my house. They're like, okay, well, it looks like the assessed value is 50,000. That's the only number we will use. And I'm like, but that's ridiculous. They only use that number just to base taxes off of. That's it.
Right.
And I can't convince, it's usually like the big national banks have done that to me.
Which is why I
work with private money lenders and local banks.
Local.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I do. I wouldn't deal with a big bank like that. They just have so many rules. If they're keeping the house, the loan in-house, they have a lot more flexibility as to how they do it.
Yep. I love portfolio lenders for that reason. Anyway, okay, last question.
All right, Glenn, last question. Not a question I would ask you, but I've been told I have to.
This is the most popular question in the forums of this week.
Well, but some people like answering, and others, it's none of your damn business. So what kind of car do you drive and why? Is it new, used, and how does this play into your investing?
I actually bought a truck. So, when I first, I just felt like it was a better fit because I did have a 325i bright red that I was driving around, and then I would go to a rental property and tell them they couldn't have a new whatever, and then I'd try to get a shovel out of my back seat and put a thing in my, you know what I mean? It just kind of sent the wrong message, and it wasn't very utilitarian. So I drive a 2012 Toyota Tundra.
Oh, yeah. I love Tundras. I want a Tundra. Anyway, it was a fascinating discussion. There's 168 right now comments on that thread of what car do you drive and why. Like, it's just a fascinating discussion on I don't know what people spend their money on investor wise. It's kind of cool. So check it out, people. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But
awesome.
All right, moving on.
By the way, I don't own that truck. An LLC does. They just let me drive it.
Oh, there we go. Just like we talked about that last week with Scott, about the attorney, about putting things into LLCs and all that. So if people haven't listened to that one, make sure you check that show out. It was fascinating. BiggerPockets.com/show109. But all right, moving on. We are going to the world famous for. All right, these questions we ask everyone. And I know you listen to our show, Glenn, so you know what's coming. Number one, what is your favorite real estate book?
I haven't read it yet. It's right here in my.
Yeah.
Wow.
Glenn, what book is that, Glenn?
It's,
For the people who are listening to the podcast,
it's
not
Brandon's
watching the
book.
video.
Oh, nice. Which they can get at biggerpockets.com/no money.
I just shameless plug for you. That's
Yeah,
a free
thank you. Now I don't have to do it.
Well, I everything goes back to the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, which I try to get people to read, but just as a place to start. And I used to buy those books like used and give them to people, and they would never comment on it. So I just quit doing that. And I said, help yourself. And I just finished one that was very tedious. It was how I turned 1,000 into $1 million in real estate in my spare time. And it was 500 pages. Woo, tough, but if you needed proof that it could be done, he'll show you every number.
Yep, that was Nickerson, right? I love that book. Yeah,
William
I love that
Nickerson,
book.
yeah.
It is a longer book, but I really like that strategy. He's got kind of the trading up thing that I'm a big fan of, the hybrid investing, I call it. So, cool.
Nice.
Josh.
All right. How about business? What is your favorite business book and why?
I don't read business books more than once, and it's usually required reading in a class or something, but there was one called The Goal. I don't think I've heard anyone mention GOAL, The Goal. And it's by a guy named Goldratt, GOLDRADT. It's like from the 84, I think. And it's about a theory of constraints. So it's more of a process management, program management, like you're running a factory kind of a thing. But it talks about constraints, and it uses Socratic reasoning and things. And I don't know, it just was interesting to me, even though I'm a sales guy. So
Cool.
I love new book suggestions.
What about hobbies? What do you do for fun?
Well, the training for the
What are we training for?
Training for marathons and my Mensa meetings keep me pretty busy. So.
Wow. So hard to know if that's the wise ass Glenn McCrorey.
Oh yeah, that's
McCrorey. I can't say your name right. Or what do you really do?
I really,
because you're not a Mensa guy, are you?
No, I'm not.
I'm not doubting that you're a Mensa guy. Yeah. I want you to be a Mensa guy. I hear they throw cool parties.
You didn't have to ask about the running part. Thank you. So, actually, I'm doing less and less with work. My work wasn't really that time consuming, but so real estate is kind of like my hobby. I really enjoy it, and it's one of those. Hey, if you do what you love, you never work. So. Real estate's kind of my hobby. Now, that being said, golf, cigars, you name it. I find lots of fun things to do, and we spent a month down in Florida, my wife and I, this past winter.
Nice.
Where I called my boss and told him I quit. He didn't know I was
Did it from Florida.
I did, yeah.
By the way, here's a picture on Instagram.
I really did.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. My parents are in Florida right now, and they're like mid-50s, just like Josh said. They're going there they're not living there, though. They're on a vacation, but yeah, they're going for a month. So I guess that's what you do when you're, older.
Unencumbered by
Unencumbered, yes.
There you go.
There you go. All right. My final question. What do you believe sets apart successful real estate investors from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think it's two things. I think, first of all, you have to have a reason to want to change your life. And, real estate was kind of it was the answer to the equation. It wasn't like, hey, I want to get in real estate. It's like, hey, here's where I'm at. And I think I know where I'm going. And how can I change that? And so I kind of used the big pile theory. Everybody put their money in a pile. And when I finally got to some people in real estate, you're like, well, that's something I think I can do. I can't inherit it. I can't be the CEO of a large corporation. So I started focusing on real estate. And so you have to have a reason to want to change your life. And then secondly, when you see, like in this William Nickerson book, hey, you can do it. It's not rocket science. You just got to start doing it and do it. And really believe that that's going to work. So anyway, that's kind of what I think. It's just you have to have an impetus to get started, and then you have to stick to it. And when you rent your condo to your sister, you need to pick yourself up and go buy property number 2 and number 3, and try not to make the same mistakes over and over again. So
I love it. Right on. Fabulous, man. That's great. And we know you're not going to make that mistake again. You didn't have to plug it twice. I mean, I know your sister gave you permission, but you took it a little farther, Glenn.
I'm just saying, stick with it. I have other mistakes. We just didn't get to those.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, man. Well, where can people find out more about you? Where can they find you?
Professionally, I would just say BiggerPockets. I get on there, a few times a week and listen to almost all the podcasts. So I'm on there quite a bit. And when I put the old "I quit my job" post up, I got a lot of traction on that one. So anybody that just said, congratulations, I didn't respond to it. If people had questions, I tried to answer every one of them. So I like to help.
Cool.
That's great.
And people can connect with you if they go to the show notes at biggerpockets.com/show110. We'll have a link to your profile. They can send you a call request and get to know you a little more there.
Great.
Perfect.
Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being on the show. We really, really do appreciate it. And again, I love the idea. I think it's great, this whole renting to organizations as a means for avoiding the hell factor or I forget what you called it, but hassle factor. There you go. That's great. That's great. Well, thanks again, Glenn. We'll see you around.
All right. Thanks.
All right, guys. That was Glenn McCrorey. Making all kinds of moves, buying real estate that is managed by corporations and tenanted by corporate. It's just a really cool idea.
It is a very cool strategy. I really want to I think I'm going to go make some phone calls. I know a lot of the group homes in my area. I'm just going to ask them, hey, you guys looking for any new properties? I mean,
not a bad idea.
It's a 2-minute phone call and you never know what might happen. So
there you go. Great. You know what? There's your action to take today, right, guys?
Yep.
Try that out. Do the same thing.
Yep. Do it.
Awesome. All right, guys. Listen, thanks for being a part of our world. Thanks for listening to the show. Show notes again are biggerpockets.com/show110. If you're not already on biggerpockets.com, jump on. You get to hang out and spend time with guys like Glenn who are making things happen every single day. These are movers and shakers and doers. So get out there and connect. And otherwise, let us know if there's anything we could do to help you out at BiggerPockets. Jump on the forums and ask us, and we're happy to help. So thanks for being a part of our world. Thanks for listening to the show. And we will catch you next time on the world famous BiggerPockets Podcast. Aren't you signing off?
Signing off.
You're listening to BiggerPockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.